Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about Kushiel's Mercy, the final book in the Imriel trilogy of Jacqueline Carey's Nomad universe. This is the sixth book in this overarching series. It's two trilogies so far. This is the final book of the second trilogy, and holy crap, I called it in my talk about Kushiel's Justice. I absolutely called it. Like, I just finished reading this book, and Jesus Christ, this woman, oh boy. So Jacqueline Carey has this thing she does where the first book we get like a solid introduction into the characters, to what the overarching plot of the story will be, that kind of thing. The second book is typically about the challenges that they face to kind of achieve this overarching plot. And then the third book, with the Federal trilogy, the first trilogy, the third book was an absolute gut punch out of left field, and like I wasn't prepared for it in the slightest. And the way that this second trilogy has been going so far, I suspected that she was going to do the exact same thing again, and oh my god, this woman did it. So another thing I want to get clear right out of the gate is that treat these books as epic fantasy, treat these books as high fantasy. The covers are terrible. They seem to make them more targeted towards a romance crowd. Yes, there is some amount of more romance, more sex in it than there would be in a typical epic fantasy series, but these books are more along the lines of Robin Hood than any other fantasy author I've read so far. Anyone, like, in terms of what they do to their characters, what they subject them to. If she is not as bad as Robin Hood, she's definitely worse. It's that bad. It's that terrible. It's that epic to read. So okay, enough raving. What was this book about? So at the end of Kushiel's Justice, we had Imriel at a stage in life where he tried to do the right thing. He tried to be, the honorable scion of his house. He tried to follow the wishes of his queen, and the core tenet through these books is from the gods. The core tenet is love as thou wilt, and in doing what he felt was his duty, he ignored that tenet, and turning your back on the gods is never a good thing. It threw him into a situation that was absolutely terrible. It resulted in nothing but tragedy, and he's now back in Terranage, following the events of that book, and he and Sidney have decided that they don't want to do this whole. They don't want to sacrifice their love for each other over duty. So they've decided to come forward, and obviously it throws everything into chaos, because you can't. There is no one happy about the fact that the heir to the throne of Terranage is in love with the child of the throne's most infamous traitor. So it forced Queen Isange to basically say, this is the tenet of the gods. You guys claim that this is how you feel, no problem. If you wish to proceed with it, Sidney will be disinherited. And initially it seems like that's the route they were going to take, but then another suitor comes calling, and obviously, like, he's going to get dismissed out of hand, and after some polite politicking, and that's precisely what happens. And before he goes, he decides to basically perform like a parting gift for them, a piece of performance from his land, and they set up this situation, and it turns out that this guy is a sorcerer, and this situation, it warps reality. Now this is a series with very little to no magic. Even like the presence of the magic that there is heavily influenced by the divine. So something like this is pretty much, it's not out of the blue because there is precedent, but it is it is very much uncommon, very much little known. So there was no preparation, no possible preparation, defense warning, anything of the sort. It worked. Everyone within the city um, basically had their memories changed, their convictions, their realities changed, and suddenly no one remembered that Emil and Sydney were a thing. They all believe that Sydney is in a love match with this prince, and they're leaving to get married. So obviously there's a crazy situation for Imriel, who was not caught in the he was intentionally left out of the magic um, by the prince. And interestingly enough, some of his worst detractors also happened to be outside of the city at the time, so they escaped the effects of this magic. So then they come back and they see the situation, like, what the hell is going on? And as part of this thing, it's not just a love match with Sydney. It has larger implications, because it's making Queen Isange make political and military decisions that she would never consider in a million years otherwise. And the nobles who were outside of the city, who come back and see, like, what's happening, they're like, no, this clearly there's something wrong here. So that's kind of the situation to kick this book off. And once again, Jacqueline Carey does her thing where she just delivers an absolute gut punch of a plot for a finale. Like, she did this stuff with the Fedra trilogy. She's done it again with the Emerald trilogy. Like, this book from start to finish is very high octane, very intense. Given the fact this is a fat book, this is like well over 800 pages. Like, that's saying something. Like, just the emotional turmoil that Emil suffers through as he tries to find a way to undo this magic, and as he navigates the entire as he navigates the world and tries to essentially find a way to break the magic, and has to weasel and has to go through the process of doing so. Like, the turmoil he is subjected to, it's like I said, what she does to her characters in terms of the misery that she inflicts on them is very much in keeping with Robin Hobb. So if you're a fan of that author, you have an idea of what's going on here in terms of just the emotional turmoil. Like, at this point, you have to wonder why Emriel isn't a mentally unstable person, because to start with, there's what happened to him over the course of the Fedra trilogy. Like, that alone was extremely traumatic. And then now he had this situation that happened to him when he tried to defy the tenets of the gods in for the sake of upholding his duty, and what he felt was his was a way of proving that he's not the product of his forebears, and he's loyal to the throne and these kind of things. And the consequences that he suffered, he went through a second extremely traumatic event, and now he has this steaming pile to deal with. Like, at what point does this guy get a break? And I'm not talking about a literal break, I'm talking about a figurative break here. So there's that. And of course, the majority of the other characters in this book, like, they're pretty much life as normal for them. So it's really only him that goes through this things, this stuff. Like, even Fedra and her consort, they're like, they don't see anything wrong. But that is one scene that I like about them. Like, even not knowing what's wrong, or even necessarily believing what's wrong, they put their trust in him, which just goes to show how deep a bond they formed with him. So that was, like, really cool to see. But yeah, once again, like, this entire story wouldn't work without, like, absolutely spellbinding characterization from Jacqueline Carey, as always. Like, once again, I said it before, I said it again, like, when I approached this sequel trilogy, I really didn't know what to expect, because Emil wasn't exactly like a standout character from the first three books. But the way Jacqueline Carey was able to craft this story to just hook me and draw me in, it just says it all. Like, it's crazy. Then in terms of the plotting, like, as I alluded to previously, like, even though this is a big book and it's very much like Emil does go through, like, numerous things trying to trying to undo this magic. Like, it's amazing how quickly it flew by, how intense it was, how just the gravity of the situation just kept you absorbed and just reading. Like that 808 pages flew by, honestly. Yeah, like I'm exhausted just thinking about it. I'm exhausted from this entire book. Like, I don't know if I have the emotional capacity to take on another Jacqueline Carey trilogy anytime soon. Like, what she does to these characters is just beyond the pale at this point. It's not misery porn, because there are a lot of like highlights and a lot of great moments of joy and these kind of things mixed in, but it's just like they face very terrible situations. Like, these books, they highlight a situation for me that grimdark isn't always about violence, isn't always about like, think back on the darkest moments of your life. You, the viewer, think back on the darkest moments of your life. How many of them involved violence being perpetuated on you or against you? Like, it was always much more, typically for most people it would be much more of an emotional turmoil, a devastating situation you were caught in, that you know, just absolutely wrecked you. And that feeling is one of the essences of grimdark that I like, and it's something that's perfectly captured in these books. Like, the terrible things happen to good people and terrible people, and that's perfectly captured here. And it's one of the reasons why I think, consider these books grimdark, consider them epic fantasy, consider them high fantasy. They're certainly in that category in terms of what they do, what they set out to achieve, and how they achieve it. Do they have a little bit more romance and sex than most fantasy books? Sure, they do. But then again, this is a genre heavily influenced by Game of Thrones, where Lannisters, the end of discussion. So yeah, absolute blast of this series, far more than I expected to have. Like I said, I don't think I'm emotionally capable of tolerating another Jacqueline Carey trilogy anytime soon. In addition to that, I did take a quick peek at the next trilogy, and it's set in her analog of the Norse, of like a Norse setting, which is a setting that I personally have issues with. It just doesn't work for me. So I don't think I'll be coming back to this universe anytime soon, but I will at some point, because at this point I'm pretty much, when I'm ready to walk back into the series, it's because I'm a glutton for punishment, essentially. And yeah, absolute blast. What can I say except read this book? And that's all I have to say about Kushiel's Mercy and the Emerald trilogy in general, and then the Maz Universe books in general from Jacqueline Carey. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.